I thought I knew what happiness looked like. It was Rachel's sleepy smile on Sunday mornings, coffee brewing while I read the sports section, her hand finding mine during movies we'd seen a dozen times. At 38, I'd built what I believed was a solid life, teaching history at Lincoln High, coaching JV football, coming home to a beautiful wife who made our modest suburban house feel like everything I'd ever wanted. We met when I was 28, at a friend's barbecue where she'd arrived late, apologizing with a laugh that made everyone forgive her instantly. Rachel had this way of entering a room that shifted its gravity. Not just her looks, though she was stunning with her auburn hair and green eyes that seemed to hold secrets, but her energy, her charm that made everyone lean in when she spoke. I was the steady one, the reliable Ryan who graded papers on Friday nights and knew every student's name by the second week of school. She was the spark that made my predictable life feel like an adventure. Our courtship was a whirlwind by my standards. 6 months of dates that stretched into dawn, conversations that revealed layers I didn't know I had, passion that made me understand why people wrote poetry. We married 2 years after that first barbecue, a small ceremony that Rachel planned with meticulous care. She'd said to me, "I want it perfect," and I'd kissed her forehead, happy to give her whatever she wanted. The early years blended into comfortable routine. I taught my classes, coached my team, came home to find her on the phone upstairs, her voice a musical murmur through the ceiling. She'd come down eventually, kiss me hello, ask about my day with what seemed like genuine interest. We'd have dinner, watch TV, make love with decreasing frequency that I attributed to the natural progression of marriage. 8 years in, we'd found our rhythm, or so I believed. Looking back now, the signs were there. The phone calls that required privacy, the way she'd sometimes look at me during dinner like she was measuring something, calculating. Her restlessness, on weekends when I wanted nothing more than to watch the game while she scrolled through her phone, occasionally sighing in a way that suggested profound dissatisfaction. But trust was my default setting. Rachel was my wife. We'd built this life together. Why would I question the foundation when the house still stood? She had her book club on Wednesdays, yoga on Mondays and Thursdays, lunch with her mother every other Sunday. I had my football, my lesson planning, my beer with colleagues on Fridays. We orbited each other in predetermined patterns, and I found comfort in the predictability. This was marriage, I thought. This was what settling down meant. That. Last Friday, before everything changed, she'd been particularly affectionate. She'd made my favorite dinner, asked about my students, even sat through the first half of the game with me before heading upstairs for another phone call. She'd waved her phone and said, "Just Melissa, she's having drama with Tom again." I'd nodded, already absorbed in the fourth quarter comeback unfolding on screen. If someone had told me that within 24 hours my marriage would be over, I would have laughed. We were solid, I would have said. We were happy. We were exactly where we were supposed to be. I was wrong about everything. Saturday afternoon, October 15th. Virginia Tech was up by 3 in the fourth quarter, and I was deep in that comfortable zone where the world outside ceased to exist. The living room was my sanctuary, worn leather recliner positioned perfectly, coffee table within reach, the 55-inch screen I'd bought myself for my birthday, displaying every blade of grass in high definition. Rachel's footsteps on the stairs barely registered. Another phone call ending, probably Melissa or her mother or one of her book club friends. She had a whole ecosystem of relationships I only knew through mentions and occasional holiday gatherings. The whisper of her movement through the house was as familiar as the referee's whistle on screen. She stood in the doorway, wearing the cashmere sweater I'd bought her last Christmas, arms crossed in a way that suggested she'd rehearsed this moment. "Ryan, can you turn off the TV?" The words didn't compute immediately. "Turn off the TV? During the game?" "Fourth quarter, babe. 5 minutes left," I replied. "Please." "This is important," she said firmly. Something in her tone made me reach for the remote. The sudden silence felt wrong, like the air pressure had changed. She moved to sit on the couch across from me, not beside me, and I noticed she'd done her makeup. Not going out makeup, but careful, deliberate application like she was presenting something. "We need to talk about us," she began, and my stomach clenched. Those words never preceded anything good. "About our marriage." "What about it?" My teacher's voice, calm and measured, even as my pulse accelerated. She took a breath, and I saw her mentally reviewing whatever script she'd prepared. "We have a beautiful wedding album upstairs. Remember how perfect that day was?" I nodded, confused by the direction. "And I want us to grow old together, Ryan. I really do. You're a good man. Stable, dependable. Everything a woman should want in a husband. Should want, not does want." The distinction cut through my confusion like a blade. She continued, looking at her hands now, twisting her wedding ring. "But I was 24 when we met. You're the only man I've ever been with, the only one I've ever really dated. And lately I've been feeling like I missed something. Like I committed before I really knew what was out there." The room seemed to tilt. I watched her mouth form words that couldn't possibly be coming from my wife. She looked up then, and her eyes were clear, determined. "I love you, Ryan, but I need to know what it's like with other men. Sexually, before I settle down completely. I'm not talking about love or relationships, just exploration. A few months to see how other men perform, to have those experiences I never had. Then I'll come back, and we can truly commit to growing old together." The silence stretched between us. My mind processed her words. This wasn't spontaneous. She'd thought about this, planned it, rehearsed it. The phone calls, the restlessness, the careful makeup. This was a presentation, and she'd expected me to respond like her audience at book club, with understanding nods and supportive murmurs. "You're asking permission to cheat on me," I said flatly. Her response was quick, rehearsed. "No, I'm being honest with you. I'm telling you what I need instead of doing it behind your back. That's what marriage is about. Honesty." "You want to have sex with other men?" I stated. "I want to explore what I missed. It's not about you, Ryan. You're wonderful. But I married my first everything. And now I'm 32 and I need to know what else is out there before it's too late." Too late for what? The question formed but didn't reach my lips. I stood up, my body making the decision before my mind fully caught up. Rachel's face shifted from determined to uncertain. "Ryan, say something," she called out. But I had nothing to say. Not to this stranger wearing my wife's face, speaking these impossible words in our living room where we'd opened Christmas presents and hosted Super Bowl parties and built what I'd thought was a life. I walked past her toward the stairs, my movements automatic, purposeful. She followed behind me, her voice rising. "Ryan, please, let's discuss this like adults." Like adults. As if adult behavior included asking your spouse for a hall pass to sample other people. My footsteps on the stairs were heavy, deliberate. Behind me, I heard her following, her voice rising with each step. The bedroom closet door opened with its familiar creak. Her suitcase, the one she used for her girls' weekends, sat on the top shelf. I pulled it down, set it on the bed, and unzipped it. My hands moved without conscious thought, gathering her clothes from the dresser, folding them with the same care I used when doing laundry. Rachel stood in the doorway, her carefully composed facade cracking. "What are you doing?" "Packing your things," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. Teaching had taught me to control my tone even when students tested every limit of patience. "Ryan, stop! You're overreacting. I was just being honest about my feelings," she protested. I moved to the closet, pulling her dresses from hangers, laying them in the suitcase. Each item was a memory. The blue dress from our anniversary dinner, the black one she wore to my school's fundraiser, The sundress from our vacation to Charleston. I folded each one, placed it carefully, moved on to the next. She stepped into the room. This isn't what I wanted. I wanted us to talk about it, to find a solution together. You found a solution. You want to sleep with other men, I replied, pulling open her underwear drawer, scooping delicates into a smaller bag. So go sleep with other men. Her voice pitched higher, panic creeping in. It's not like that. I said I'd come back, that it was just temporary. A few months to... I turned to face her, holding her jewelry box. To see how other men perform. Those were your words. You want to comparison shop. See if you can upgrade. That's not... You're twisting everything, she cried. Am I? You want permission to have sex with other men while remaining married to me. What am I misunderstanding? I asked. She reached for my arm as I moved past her to pack her toiletries. Ryan, please, I love you. That's why I was honest instead of just doing it. I stopped, looked at her hand on my arm, then met her eyes. Even if you asked for permission, it's still infidelity. The words hit her like a physical blow. She stepped back, her eyes filling with tears that might have moved me an hour ago. Now they just looked like another performance. You can't just throw me out. This is my home too, she said defiantly. The house is in my name, I replied, resuming packing, adding her medications from the bathroom cabinet. You can contest it, in the divorce if you want. The word came out as a whisper. Divorce? Ryan, I wasn't asking for a divorce. I was trying to save our marriage by being honest about what I need. I zipped the suitcase, lifted it, carried it past her to the stairs. She followed, her protests becoming increasingly desperate. Where am I supposed to go? She demanded. To whoever you were planning to explore with first, I said, reaching the front door, opening it, setting the suitcase on the porch. Or back to your parents. I don't really care. You're throwing away 8 years over one conversation? She asked. Incredulously, I turned to face her fully, and something in my expression made her step back. No, Rachel. You threw away 8 years when you decided I wasn't enough. When you decided our marriage vows were negotiable. When you planned this whole presentation thinking I'd be weak enough to agree. I never said you weren't enough. She started. You said you need to know what you're missing. That means I'm not enough. It means our life isn't enough. Our marriage isn't enough. I picked up her purse from the hall table, handed it to her. So go find your enough. Just don't expect me to wait while you do. She stood there, mascara running, the composed woman who'd practiced her speech replaced by someone realizing their calculated risk had failed spectacularly. This isn't how this was supposed to go? No, I agreed. You expected me to be the same pushover who lets you disappear for phone calls, who never questions your girls' nights, who's grateful just to have you. But here's what you missed, Rachel. I know my worth, and it's more than being someone's backup plan. I guided her to the door, my hand firm but not rough on her elbow. She pleaded, Ryan, please, we can work this out. I take it back. I don't need anyone else. Yes, you do. You just told me you do, and I believe you. I stepped back inside. Your things are packed. The divorce papers will be filed Monday. Don't come back here. You can't, she began. I closed the door, locked it, stood there listening to her sob on the porch, pound on the door, plead through the wood. After 10 minutes, I heard her call someone, probably her mother, and 20 minutes later, a car pulled up. Voices murmured, the suitcase scraped across concrete, car doors slammed, then silence. I returned to my recliner, picked up the remote, and found another game. But the sanctity of Saturday afternoon football was broken. The room felt different, emptier but somehow cleaner, like opening windows after winter. My marriage was over. 8 years dissolved in a single conversation, and all I felt was clarity. Monday. Morning, I sat in my lawyer's office at 8 a.m. sharp. Jim Harrison had handled my colleague's divorce 2 years prior, and he listened to my story with the practiced neutrality of someone who'd heard every variation of marital implosion. He explained, sliding papers across his desk. Washington's a no-fault state. But given that the house was yours before marriage and you've kept it in your name, she has no claim to it. Joint assets will be split 50-50. Fine, I replied. I signed where he indicated, each signature another step away from the wreckage. Has she contacted you? Jim asked. 43 calls, 60-something texts. I haven't responded. Jim nodded approvingly. Good. All communication goes through me now. If she shows up at your work or home, call the police. Document everything. The next week's unfolded with surreal efficiency. Rachel had moved back with her parents, and according to the gossip that filtered through mutual acquaintances, she'd crafted a narrative where she was the victim of my sudden irrationality. She told anyone who'd listen that she'd simply been honest about needing to work on our marriage, and I'd overreacted by throwing her out without discussion. My colleague Mark told me over lunch, she says she didn't do anything wrong. Says you went crazy over a hypothetical conversation. His wife was in Rachel's book club. Hypothetical, I repeated, then laughed. A short, bitter sound. She asked permission to sleep with other men for a few months. Called it exploration. Mark's eyes widened. She actually said that? Word for word. Wanted to see how other men perform before settling down completely, I confirmed. He shook his head. Jesus. My wife said Rachel made it sound like you were controlling, jealous over nothing. She's good at that, making her wants sound reasonable. I lived with it for 8 years without realizing it, I replied. The financial untangling was straightforward. We'd kept separate accounts except for household expenses. Her name wasn't on the house, my retirement, or my car. In 8 years of marriage, we'd remained surprisingly unenmeshed, which now felt like unconscious self-preservation. Her lawyer sent a proposal suggesting counseling instead of divorce. I had Jim respond with a simple no and a timeline for asset division. Another proposal came, this time requesting temporary spousal support. Also denied, she had a degree, a job history, and parents willing to house her. The house felt different without her presence. Not empty, reclaimed. I reorganized the living room, moving furniture she'd insisted on keeping in certain positions. I converted her craft room back into an office, setting up the desk I'd stored in the garage. Each change was a small revolution, a declaration that this space was mine to shape. My students noticed something different. One said after class, "You seem lighter, Mr. Peterson, like more here." She was right. For years, I'd been partially absent. Part of my attention always attuned to Rachel's moods, needs, silent dissatisfactions. Now I was fully present, in my classroom, in my life, in my own skin. 3 weeks after I'd packed her bags, the final manipulation came. She showed up at school during my planning period, slipping past the front office with the confidence of someone who'd attended every fundraiser and football game as the devoted teacher's wife. She said, closing my classroom. Door behind her, "We need to talk." She'd dressed carefully. The outfit I'd once said made her look sophisticated, subtle makeup, her wedding ring still in place. But I saw her differently now, like looking at a magic trick once you knew the mechanism. You need to leave. All communication goes through lawyers, I told her firmly. Ryan, please. I made a mistake. I see that now. I was having some kind of crisis, and I said things I didn't mean, she pleaded. You meant them. You'd rehearsed them. You'd been thinking about them during all those private phone calls. Her composure flickered. How did you... Those were calls with friends. Were they? Or were you already lining up your explorations? I challenged. I never cheated on you, she protested. No, you just asked permission to. Somehow, that's worse. At least cheaters know what they're doing is wrong. You tried to make me complicit in my own humiliation. She moved closer, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. "I'm seeing a therapist," she said. "Working on myself. Understanding why I sabotaged us. We can fix this, Ryan. We can be stronger." "We can't. Because we doesn't exist anymore. You ended it the moment you decided I was something to settle for after you'd sampled better options." "That's not what she began. "Rachel, stop! Your mother called me last night. Did you know that? Wanted to tell me how you cry yourself to sleep, how you realize your mistake, how you just needed attention and I should forgive you." Her face flushed. "She shouldn't have." "She mentioned you've been going out a lot, meeting new people. Exploring, perhaps?" I asked pointedly. The flush deepened. "I'm allowed to have a social life." "Of course you are. You're getting exactly what you asked for. The freedom to explore. I just refuse to be your safety net." I opened my classroom door, a clear dismissal. "The divorce will be final in 2 months. Please don't come here again." She stood there, this beautiful woman I'd once built my world around, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just the clean emptiness of a finished chapter. "You'll regret this," she said finally. "When you're alone, you'll realize what you threw away." "I threw away someone who was willing to throw me away," I replied. "That's not loss. That's quality. Control." She left then, heels clicking down the hallway with wounded dignity. I returned to grading papers, my hand steady, my mind clear. Outside my window, students laughed on the quad, their voices carrying the careless joy of youth. They still believed in forever, in true love, in happily ever after. I hoped they'd be luckier than I was. Or maybe, I thought as I marked an excellent analysis of the Civil War, luck had nothing to do with it. Maybe the lucky ones were those who recognized their worth before someone else tried to negotiate it down. The bell rang and students flooded in for 5th period. I stood, straightened my tie, and prepared to teach them about historical patterns, cause and effect, and how sometimes the most significant changes came from moments of decisive action. Told them as they settled, "Today, we're discussing revolutionary responses to untenable situations." It felt appropriate. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday. I signed them over coffee, the pen moving across the signature line with no hesitation, no drama, just the conclusion of administrative details. My lawyer had done excellent work. The settlement was clean, fair, final. That evening I sat in my living room, truly mine now, and waited for the sadness to hit. Surely ending an 8-year marriage should trigger grief, regret, something beyond this strange lightness in my chest. But as the hours passed and the house settled into its nighttime quiet, I realized what I was feeling wasn't emptiness. It was relief. Relief that I no longer had to wonder about those phone calls. Relief that her sighs of dissatisfaction couldn't touch me. Relief that I'd never again have to watch her measure me against some invisible standard and find me wanting. The marriage I'd mourned had been a fiction, my projection of contentment, onto a woman who'd been planning her exit strategy in whispered conversations and careful calculations. She'd simply miscalculated my response, assumed my stability meant weakness, my contentment meant I'd accept any terms to keep her. Rachel had asked for freedom to explore what she was missing. I'd given her exactly that, complete, permanent freedom. She could explore endless options now, compare and contrast to her heart's content. The only thing she couldn't do was come back to the safe harbor she'd taken for granted. My phone buzzed. Another text from a mutual friend saying Rachel was struggling, that I should consider forgiveness. I deleted it without responding. Her struggles weren't my concern anymore. My concern was the stack of essays on my desk, tomorrow's lesson plan, the assistant coach position I was considering, the life I was rebuilding on my own terms. People asked if I was dating again. The question seemed absurd. I was barely divorced, still remembering what my own preferences were after years of unconscious compromise. I'd started watching documentaries she'd hated, cooking meals she'd called too simple, spending entire Sundays in comfortable silence without worrying about anyone's restlessness but my own. Maybe someday I'd meet someone who saw partnership differently, as addition, not comparison shopping. Someone who understood that commitment meant choosing the same person every day, not keeping them as insurance while window shopping for upgrades. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe this was my life. Now, teaching, coaching, reading, existing in my own space without apology or negotiation. The thought didn't frighten me. It felt like possibility. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of my books, my choices, my future, undefined, but entirely mine. Tomorrow was Friday. I'd teach my classes, have beer with colleagues, come home to my sanctuary, where no one would ask me to turn off the game for a conversation designed to shatter everything I'd built. Rachel got what she'd asked for. So did I. A life where my worth wasn't up for debate, where love meant choice, not settling, where marriage was a partnership, not a placeholder. The relief wasn't just about escaping a bad situation. It was about discovering I'd had the strength all along to demand better, and finally, I was living it. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.